Here is our first program which prints hello world, and from now on we can figure out how to program in Python. I will not be mistaken if I say that any programming in any language revolves around two centers. This is data and manipulations with this data, some processing and actions. Everything we do as developers is regarded with these two components. And wherever you look, any programs are a dance around data and their processing. Games, for example. Your character destroys the employees of hell, collecting looted junk on the way and increasing his characteristics. All this is data. Sites and social networks. Users post photos, write sparkling comments and like. All this is also data and the actions related to this data. And something is constantly happening with this data. They can appear, someone creates them, they can be displayed to us, they can be changed, and they can be deleted. These are four standard actions that we perform with any data, and these four actions got a special abbreviation, CRUD. Create, read, update, and destroy or delete. This, so to speak, dual nature of programming, data and data manipulations, manifests itself even in this simple hello world example that we just wrote here. Print hello world. A function is just a piece of code with a certain name that performs the action described in it. In this case, its name is a print. And the print function prints out some information, the string hello world. Strings are one of the data types, and I'm going to start my story with data and data types. As you probably know, all data in computer science is divided into types. You may ask, why divide the information we receive into some special categories or types? What's the point of this? And the meaning of dividing information into separate categories, or speaking normally into data types, is actually twofold. On the one hand, different types of data require different amounts of memory, RAM, to store. On the other hand, different data behave differently because we perform different operations on different categories of data. For example, we are used to the fact that our description of the world is expressed in words, and for everything that we have here, we have some name or word. This is how our consciousness works. But despite the fact that all information flow that we receive every day is expressed in words, in fact, we operate with these words and concepts in different ways, depending on what we're dealing with. Our consciousness, so to speak, filters the information flow and divides it into categories and types according to their meaning. It seems that I'm here as the Captain Obvious, but I just want to draw your attention to this. For example, we just have words that we use to describe objects. And we can take and, so to speak, add two words, for example, boy and runs, and get the phrase boy runs. Actually, this is how we hear, write, and read the text. That is, in fact, the result of this addition will be the appending of one word to another. In programming, this operation on strings is called concatenation, like here in the hello world. One word plus another word. Hello world. In programming, this operation on strings is called concatenation, when one line of word is appended to another. Numbers can behave differently. I'm just talking about the flow of information now, regardless any programming language. For example, if we write the number 1 on a piece of paper and then add one more to it, we get two ones side by side, or the 11 number. But numbers have a completely different meaning to us. Yes, we can thus add one number to another and, so to speak, get the number 11. But for us, the meaning of numbers lies in those special mathematical operations that we can perform on them. The addition operation on numbers is performed in a different way. And if we add 1 and 1, then we get 2. We are not even talking about multiplication, division, degrees, logos, and so on. We are talking about the fact that the same operation of addition for different types of data gives different results. Thus, we can already separate one data type, words or strings, from the data type numbers or integers. We can do it because these two data types behave differently and have different meanings for us as humans. Another example with numbers. This is an example of another data type from our real life. This is the time reckoning. The time for us is expressed in numbers. But please note that the operations that we perform with the time data type are performed according to different rules. We have 60 minutes in 1 hour and 60 seconds in a minute. And 2 minutes is 120 seconds. This is the sexagesimal numeral system that we inherited from Babylonian times. The same goes, for example, days of the week. We have only 7 days in a week, we have 13 days in a month and 12 months in a year, and so on. What did I want to show by this? I wanted to show that even for us as humans, the incoming information flow is mixed. But as I said, this is not the only reason to separate data types. The second important reason for dividing data into types is the allocation of memory for storing them. And I think that the general idea of data types in programming languages is clear. So, basic built-in data types in Python. Numbers. Strings. Boolean type, true and false. Lists. Tuples are immutable lists, dictionaries, files, sets. There are basic and built-in types because they don't need to be imported in any way. You can work with them right away. All data in Python is represented in the form of objects. You will hear this word very often. Objects are allocated areas of memory with values and associated sets of possible operations, that is, sets of those actions that we can perform on this specific data type. How objects of built-in data types are created? Objects of built-in data types are created using so-called literals. A literal is a kind of syntax of the language, if you like, an expression that will create an object for us. For example, 1 is a literal that creates an integer object in memory and assigns 1 as its value. Or quotes, double quotes or single quotes. It's a literal or syntax for creating string objects. Here I created an empty string. To find out what data type we are dealing with, we need to use the type function. Type, and pass into it a variable as an argument, more on them a bit later, or a literal that will create the data type object we need. We see that the 1 is an object of the type integer, int class. And an empty string is a string object, the str class. Python writes class here because data types in Python are implemented in the form of classes. So let's back to our Hello World program. If we call the type function and pass into it the phrase Hello World in quotes, we will see that the Hello World is also a string data type. We just made sure that this is the case, and now I'm going to make a mistake of using a literal to create a string. Instead of two quotes, opening and closing, I want to use just one and see what happens. Hello, and hit enter. And now we can see that the Python interpreter is pointing out an error. Formally this is called an exception. Syntax error, EOL, that stands for end of line. Syntax error at end of line while scanning string literal. Exceptions, errors, are also data types. This one tells me about a syntax error. So, what we have done here in our first example. In our first Hello World program, we passed a string literal into the print function. This string literal is an expression in single or double quotes that created an object of string data type in memory, and then assigned to it the value Hello World, and the function print received this argument and printed its value. So we are done with general information about data types. The next video will be about strings. So if you like the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.